Mm. I like silence. Something soothing and healing in silence. And it also comes with an inner movement. That's a movement that touches my heart. Invites me in my heart. So it's a heartfelt silence.
That's beautiful. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. What was coming from me also in the silence was the simplicity. The ease and the simplicity of just being in that expansiveness. And I know I talk a lot about the big breath of our universe. And since we last met, I've been using that in many different situations, including a large online symposium earlier this year, and a recognition that the word for breath is the word for spirit, of course, in ancient Indian Vedic tradition. But the sense of the big breath of our universe flowing through our little breaths in every moment. And more and more consciously inviting people to, in silence, to breathe the big breath of the universe, the benevolent big breath of the universe, the loving big breath of the universe through us. So as we breathe in, we breathe that inwards to us, to nurture us, to guide us, to hold us. And then as we breathe out its love. So our little breath is mirroring, in that sense, the big breath of the universe. But it's that breathing in of that vast sentience and benevolence, and then just breathing it through our little breaths into the world.
Beautiful.
It's such a simple thing.
Yeah. So profound what you're saying. I love the simplicity concept as something we're invited to embrace more and more, as things are much simpler than we think. And there's a simplicity in reading the world and seeing the world. And I like this idea of breathing in the cosmic love. And as we breathe out, we co-participate in that love, we exchange that love. Each and one making a little difference. And somehow silence for me takes me into that loving dance of breathing. That's alive, that is moving. And as it dances, as it moves, it invites me to join. And
that's exactly it. It's an invitation, isn't it? It's an invitation to dance with the universe in this wonderfully emergent, evolutionary impulse and flow that we were speaking of earlier. Because that flow is fast, and it seems that the faster that flow is, as it will be through this time of turbulence and potential birthing, you know, all pregnant mothers, mums to be, you know, when the going really gets to that point, just breathe. So actually something as profound and yet as simple as what we're sharing in silence and the breath, and really, really can be.
I like this idea of just breathing, because ultimately it's what we are asked to do.
Yes.
Just be a breath. And I also like this idea of looking at that way is an invitation to co-participate, to be co-responsible.
Exactly.
Of what wants to unfold. Because as we breathe in and out, we contribute to that movement of air.
Exactly.
surrounding and embracing the earth.
Yeah. And it's the thing we share. We share with I'm executive producing a film at the moment, I might have mentioned before, but it's actually in production, called A Radical Guide to Reality. And the script begins with everything breathes. People breathe. Plants breathe. Planets breathe. Our whole universe breathes. So this is something we share with the entirety of creation, of our universes. Creative emergence.
It's a common denominator.
It's the simplest common denominator in that sense. Yeah.
And you spoke about the word spirit and the soul and breath as all connected to the same root. And for me, that root from the Vedic and Sanskrit is Atma. And Atma.
And that's the name of your company, Prana.
Yeah, the prana. So it's as we breathe, we let the universal soul, the spirit, inspire us.
Exactly.
And as we are aware of that, we co-create, we exchange. And I like the idea, at least that as far as I've learned, that Atman is both the individual soul and the universal soul coming together. So as our journey is to realize that we are cosmic.
Exactly.
We are all one.
Exactly.
When we are one, according to the Vedic tradition, become as Brahma.
Exactly so. Yeah. Exactly so. And the beauty of it is with, the work that I do around the cosmic hologram, it's that wholeness expressed in every pixel, or the universe soul body expressed in every cell, which we are cells of the body of our universe.
The macrocosm and the macrocosm.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think then you really understand that profound unity, but also the beauty of the differentiation, that unity expressed in vast diversity. Yeah. Yeah. And I've been working to go beyond that terminology, that language, because even unity and diversity, whilst it's lovely, I had to go beyond that. So unity in belonging, this realization that we belong. We're inseparable, but we belong. We don't have to be invited in to this journey, because we are here because we belong, because we too have innate meaning and purpose, just as the wholeness of our universe does. And break that breath, that big breath through the little breaths of love and life and spirit, are such the simplest ways, it seems to me, that we can literally remember that. And
I like these three words, unity as being one, the diverse as looking to different verses, if you like, and the last one used.
Belonging.
Yeah, remembering.
Remember that we belong, yes.
So putting the members together somehow.
Exactly.
So, and again, there's this expansion, contraction, which again is the breath.
Is the breath.
Because we breathe in, we expand. As we breathe out,
exactly,
we somehow, or the other way around. But it's a contraction and expansion. That again invites into a dance sorts of polarities, into a dance of diverse aspects, if you like.
Yeah.
And the other thing, you spoke about the word prana. For me, the breath in prana is also how when you breathe in the light.
Yes.
You're probably much well versed into explaining from a physics perspective, the light particles that we may breathe in as we breathe the prana.
It's a beautiful, simplest of simple ways of dancing, this beautiful dance of creation together. And there's something as well that I'm just wondering for your own work, how to bring this in, because I think you mentioned the word complex, complexity. And for me, our universe, its unity, its simplicity is manifested through this beautiful evolutionary complexity. But there's a different word that I feel describes our human perception, certainly when we've moved through this perception separation, which is complication.
Yeah.
Humans are complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, it's difficult to really root ourselves in that underlying simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
But when we can root ourselves in that and remember, then it seems to me that what you were sharing earlier about systemic change can let go of the complications and embrace the complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Because life is complex, the universe is complex. But it's complex because its simplicity is in right relationship
Mm-hmm.
with its diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're saying. The stance between simplicity expressing itself through diversity,
Exactly.
which gives several layers of aspects, of qualities, of attributes, of information, if you like, that makes it seen as complex, as multi-layered.
Mm.
But complication for me speaks more about some knots in the system needs to be that are tied and that prevent us from seeing, appreciating that luminous complexity.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Mm.
And that's why I feel, and complications have abounded in a worldview of separation.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're trying to come from that perception and put things together, and they become more and more and more complicated because they're moving further and further away from the natural way of being.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the natural way in which our universe has evolved over nearly 14 billion years, from simplicity to complexity.
Mm-hmm. And also, I'd say that complication has to do with rejecting the simplicity.
Exactly.
And so making it complicated as giving it more value to some extent, or more sophistication from the mind.
It's mind-driven. It's mind-driven. But it's also mind-driven in that sense of separation-driven.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be, as you're saying, it's sort of imposing an appearance of order.
Yeah, and also it drives the sense that a complication needs to be solved.
Yes.
A problem to be solved rather than, so us solving it rather than it expressing it.
Exactly.
And solving itself.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So somehow I'm reminded of the complexity theories I've been with, and also the idea that, maybe I'm going too far, but there's the idea that it feels like there's a question that raises, that once we are able to hold that question, it answers itself to some extent.
Mm.
And what I like also of this idea of the big breath as being also the prana that we inspire and that inspire us, is that when we breathe, we somehow bring clarity, bring light to our system, and bringing oxygen to our brain, which allows us to see things more clearly, and essentially to be able to see things.
Yeah, I always, that reminds me of a story that I've written about a few times, but it was when I was in Fiji many years ago, learning to scuba dive. And I had virtually 10 minutes in a hotel swimming pool with all the gear on. The next thing, I was in 100 feet of Pacific Ocean on a rubber boat, and the swell was very, very high. And I'm small and the equipment's heavy, and I'm being guided by my tutor, my instructor, to just put my hand over my regulator and the mast, go backwards over into the water. So, like a good student, I said, "You're fine." And I did, and I was terrified. And I started to hyperventilate. And what he did, he obviously saw that happening. He was in the water beside me, and he came to me and he just took my head in his hands, and very gently, he just made me look down. And when I looked down, I saw the wonder of this ocean life beneath me, and I forgot to be afraid. I forgot to be afraid. And there was something about bringing the breath into that sense of focus. And all my fear just fell away. And I then entered this wonderland. So there's something here as well about when we can slow our breaths, when we can really see, instead of the turbulence, that we can actually come back into that sense of peace and that knowing and realization that this is what life is, this is what love is, this is who we are.
Beautifully put. I love this idea of allowing the breath to direct us. Use the word focusing, right? Direct us towards wonders. The beauty of life, really. The beauty of the planet. Feel the beauty of the wonderful realm under the waterline. Yeah. And as we allow the breath to take us there, to the beauty, then the fears dissipate.
The fears dissipated. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's simplicity as a way to heal from fears that we need to let go of.
And fears, I'm not saying that there aren't things that we should legitimately, be I mean, if a tiger's running at us, I think it's very legitimate to be fearful and head the other way, preferably. But, that this worldview of separation, our dis-ease of separation, has really brought us into chronic fear. Our bodies are not meant to be chronically fearful. The system works when there is an immediate threat that we need to deal with. But when we're feeling threatened all the time, when we're feeling fearful, that is not in any way how we are physically made, emotionally, everything. So it seems to me that at this time, and going into the silence and hearing the wisdom that's available to us and taking those breaths gently and easily and sharing the understanding of what we truly share of a living and loving universe as its microcosmic co-creators can actually help us, we talked about remembering earlier, can actually help us in that remembering that we are inseparable. It can really help us then to move from what I call the loneliness to the aloneness, to the all-oneness of the nature of reality itself. So in that journey, I feel that's where the sort of systemic transformation that we were speaking of earlier can happen. But it almost has to happen from the inside out. It has to be in the being into the doing of it rather than the doing, because the doing is all the complication, rather than being in the doing is the simplicity being beautifully manifested in wondrous complexity. But always knowing that root of simplicity.
Of that breath emerging from the inside.
Yes.
And also fear is something that typically amplifies when you contract.
Exactly.
So when you don't breathe.
Exactly.
So when you don't breathe, you contract and that fear expands and you let it govern you, drive you.
Absolutely.
And one way to release it is actually let air come in, light come in and somehow dissipate the shadows, which doesn't mean ignoring the fears, but somehow being able to be with it rather than turn your sight away.
That's right, and that's true, I think, regardless of whether the fear is imagined or physically real. I mean, when I was hyperventilating in that ocean, I was breathing, but I was breathing so shallowly that the breath did not flow through my body.
You're right, yeah. That could also happen.
Yeah.
So, but and in that case, we think we are breathing, which we somehow are, but are not allowing the breath to really go through.
Exactly.
To fill us up.
Exactly. And so it's that deep breathing, regardless of whether the fear is imaginary or real, is beneficial in any case. It centers us, it calms us, it enables us to be more effective in whatever our response is, whether that's to run away from a tiger or whether it's to realise that there really is nothing to fear, and to allow that just to dissolve.
And I'm somehow connecting the verb illuminate as letting the light come in, and heal as being somehow linked. Because as for what we just shared, when we allow the breath to come in, it opens something inside.
Yeah.
And that there's light coming in and warming up, or bringing clarity, or just bringing life.
Yes.
And in that opening, there are cracks that manifest. There are also wounds that can be healed.
There are indeed, and you know, talking of wounds and healing, and certainly emotional and psycho-spiritual healing, I think being with someone who can help an individual, a person with those traumas, to be able to be in that silence, because from that silence does come insight. Does come insight. Because when we fear or when we have trauma, there are so many coping mechanisms, but many of them are distracting from the opportunity to actually just be quiet, not to run around and around and around the trauma, but to be helped to have a deeper insight into what it's about, and also a deeper awareness of therefore how to move beyond it. So there is so much to be helpful for.
And I like the word insight has to do with having sight.
And
being
having
able
sight,
to see
an inner sight.
Inner sight.
Exactly.
And again, being able to focus and see the wonders or see the wounds. But as we see it from a different perspective,
yes,
it lightens us. It gives a different balance to it. And going back to healing, I like the fact that in English, the verb to heal is somehow connected to whole.
Absolutely.
Which is about making it complete.
Exactly.
Reuniting,
exactly.
or remembering, reconnecting the parts which have been fragmented, which have been broken, which have been seen as fragmented and broken.
Exactly.
So bringing back that unity.
Exactly. And as you say, it's that realization of that unity, because we're never broken in that regard, but our perception is fragmented. And therefore that perception, it's about that awareness and perception.
Yeah, it's that perception of being disconnected
Exactly.
or being diseased.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And the English word for disease, of course, if you say dis-ease, it's that lack of ease, it's that lack of wholeness and relationship and benevolence.
That lack of breath. Yeah.
Lack of breath. Yeah.
So if we were to somehow link this gift of science as a way to take us into that reunion, in that perception we all one, in healing ourselves, I think I'm wondering how that self-awareness contributes by itself to a collective awareness, to a collective shift.
How could it not? On the basis we are inseparable.
Yeah.
And, you know, mind and consciousness aren't what we have, they're what we in the whole world are. So when we heal, that naturally reverberates.
Has a ripple effect.
Has a ripple effect throughout the field. The other thing that I find really helpful and have over many, many decades is to sit in circle with a small group of people. You know, it could be, I would suggest 3 or more. 8's a great number. 5's a good number. Any number's a good number. But just sitting in a circle in silence, and then from that silence sharing insights, whether that's in terms of of focus, or whether it's in terms of a healing circle. And because the field is the combined field of consciousness, of awareness, what comes through for one person is inevitably helpful for everyone else in that circle. So I'm finding and seeing now many, many, many small circles of coherence, small intimate circles of coherence, with a number of raisons to be. Some of them are healing, some of them are about guidance, some of them are about, how to attune and align with the evolutionary flow that's coming through us. But it's such and again, like the breath itself, they're so simple. They're so simple. And yet in our paradigm, our mindset, our worldview of separation, we've forgotten that deep wisdom of sitting in circle, rather than being in hierarchies and leadership roles and impositions. So I'm finding across communities, across organisations, many, many different ways are coming to this understanding of circle work as an amazing, beneficial way of being together.
Absolutely, and I totally second that. I'm finding these wisdom dialogues we're organizing to be basically sitting around the well of wisdom, sitting around silence, and let it breathe with it, if you like, and let it speak to each and every one, and allow each and every one to be the voice of that wisdom.
Yes.
What I typically see also that when we speak one at a time, oftentimes it's kind of do not recall who has spoken.
Exactly.
But you remember what has shifted.
Yes.
In the circle.
Yes.
And so it's like we were capable to breathe as one, to speak as one, to hear as one. And by being one, something shifts.
Yes.
In the circle, inside each and every one. And I'm totally convinced what you're saying, that when we change inside, somehow it has a ripple effect. It has a resonance. It reverberates outside. It could be in simple ways by which we look at somebody else after having been in such a dialogue.
Yeah.
Or little changes we might do in the way we interact with others or life.
Yeah. Yeah. As you said, those profound insights can be then, used helpfully, work helpfully in whatever purpose and way that they come forward, whether it is healing or whether it's just deciding, you begin a new project. Let's sit in circle, just to attune and align with what the universe is calling through us to serve in this particular situation. So it applies to everything. I was going to say even the choice of dinner, but we don't do that in our house. But, yeah.
If there's a final word that wants to be expressed or voiced.
For me, it's that having for many, many years journeyed to more deeply understand the nature of reality itself and who we are as part of that, is the realization that our universe doesn't just meaningfully exist and purposefully evolve as a unitive entity. It's loving. I'm now describing our universe as a living and loving universe. And when I started to use those words even, I just felt them within me. So my breathing took a whole next level of the big breath of a living and loving universe. And I would invite everyone to find in their own journeys a homecoming to that understanding.
I love that. Yeah, for me it's, how I translate that, what you're saying is that we are surrounded by love.
We are love.
We are love. And also like this universe, realizing that it again is two components, unity and diversity coming together at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's also a song. a universe.
A universe.
So a song and a dance and
unison, yeah.
all
Yeah.
of that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jude.